Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I'm somewhere in the middle of my PhD project. I'm very much looking forward to your feedback. I will talk about typographetics of urban spaces, which means overall, I'm interested in the social dimension of typographic acts in urban environments. And I want to have a look at the many ways that sign producers use letters to express who they are and what sort of messages they are trying to convey. And before I start with my very orderly structured presentation, focusing on discourse types and shop types, I would like to invite you to dive with me into my visual data, the typographic landscape of the Ruhr area in Germany, for about 2 minutes, to share some thoughts with you on how I approach this question of typography as a social dimension in urban spaces. Urban spaces are covered with mostly short texts. They mark places, are deictic, and give orientation to people moving through those spaces. Written marks indicate ownership. They regulate the behavior of individuals. They advertise and seduce. Likewise, inscriptions are means of remembrance, symbolic representations of power spheres, agents in the struggle for visibility and recognition, and tools of resistance. So the materiality of letters in urban spaces is produced by a variety of authors with different goals. Government agencies, global corporations, local shop owners, sticker activists. They all choose from a range of graphetic resources to communicate their messages. They design letter forms or choose from a myriad of already existing fonts. They select materials and sign types, decide on color and size, mounting height and illumination, and the integration of the letters into the architectural context. As Jürgen Spitzmüller put it, language is the means by which people present themselves and relate to each other. And this is equally true for materialized, typographically designed language in urban spaces, no matter whether created by professionals or lay people. Not only the content of the texts, but also their form allows sign producer to express how they see themselves or want to be perceived, and whom they might want to address. Typographic forms may have historical and geographical connotations, and can be understood as acts of social positioning. At the bottom right, for example, we see a kiosk owner who has recreated a Marlboro sign by cutting out letters from a PVC foil by hand and sticking them on a board, possibly not having access to one of these original brand signs. Equally, graphetic decisions can be understood as indicators of identity, differentiation or affiliation to something. And by choosing connotatively strongly charged typographic forms, values and attitudes can be communicated. Thus also the choices of languages and the visibility or non-visibility of script systems can be debated as acts of inclusion or exclusion. Thank you so very much for doing this visual tour with me. I want to continue with firstly presenting my overall research question, the data, context, methods. And secondly, I will focus on the area of genre and show the results from 2 case studies I've done on discourse types and shop types. And lastly, I will present my conclusions. The research question of my thesis is, how are typographic resources used to create social meaning in multilingual and multi-scriptural urban spaces? I want to explore this in 3 areas of genre, ideology, and identity in my data. I'm relying on the seminal work of Jürgen Spitzmüller, Hartmut Stöckel, Robert Waller, Johan Yellowhead, and others. And I'm taking these concepts into the typographic landscape of the Ruhr area. In the area of genre, I'm looking at the creation of reception and production patterns in discourse types and shop types. In the area of ideology, I'm looking at the expression of values and attitudes in connotatively highly charged type styles, such as black letter, for example, and into the graphetic aspects of political debates and scene affiliations on stickers that are very numerous in our data set. And in the area of identity, I'm looking particularly at aspects of cultural identity, how social positioning is created in the co-application of multiple script systems, as well as the many occurrences of ethnic stereotypical letter forms, some of them mimicry, in our dataset. My research takes place in the Ruhr Metropolis in North Rhine-Westphalia in Germany. The special thing about that area is that it's the biggest migration area in Germany, due to 3 big migration phases, the first starting in 1850, which makes it a very diverse and multilingual region. My research is linked to the interdisciplinary research project Science of the Metropolis, Visual Multilingualism in the Ruhr Area at the University of Duisburg-Essen, edited by Evelyn Ziegler, where sociolinguists, urban sociologists, and integration scientists jointly research the visible multilingualism. And together we've generated a data corpus of 25,500 photos taken in 8 streets, 4 in the north and 4 in the south of 4 cities, Duisburg, Essen, Bochum, and Dortmund. And you can see that all these 4 cities are divided by the highway A40, which has the nickname the social equator, because in the north, the rents and the per head incomes are significantly lower than in the south. And this region has gone through a massive structural change. There were about 300 coal mines in 1850, with a very high productivity until the 1960s. And when the coal crisis began, that led to the closing of all mines, the last closing 2 years ago. So we've taken our 25,500 georeference photographed and graphs and tagged them on a database according to various categories, such as location, the languages we found, discourse types, size of the signs, materials, type styles, and so forth, which then allows to search for specific combinations of parameters and analyze the data. So let's have a look at my overall research methods. I'm applying a combination of quantitative and qualitative analysis of image and interview data. The guideline-based interviews with sign producers and sign recipients will be my next step. And today I want to show you the results from the visual image analysis. I've looked at 11 parameters in different sample sizes. Overall, I always used all 25,500 images except for the 2 parameters, color and material, where I did a structured randomized sample analysis with 500 images. And I'm going to focus on a few results because if I present everything, I'm going to talk for 15 hours straight, and we don't want that. A brief reconnection with the concept of genre. So genres function as a reception and production pattern, given access to form, function, meaning, interrelationships of designed artifacts. Genre is kind of a tricky field of investigation because all these fixed taxonomies never actually fit anything in the end. And on top of it can be dangerously reductionistic, and no single graphic resource ever relates to any fixed meaning. Nevertheless, the visible urban landscape is a visually mediated world in which visual patterns are formed and visible. And genres can be thought of as a conceptual orientation framework for sign recipients as a variable set of prototypical elements that actors, communicative actors use to create discourse. And I want to have a look at what sign producers actually really do with a certain combination of graphic resources, in particular urban contexts, and which patterns I find in my data. And I'm going to do this in 2 areas. Firstly, looking at discourse types that describe broad units of text functions in urban space. Skollen and Wong Skollen have defined the first 4 in their seminal work, Discourses in Place. Regulatory signs are the ones announcing rules and prohibitions, whose compliance can be enforced by law. Infrastructural signs inform the public and organize our infrastructure. Commercial signs refer to everything with shops, companies, advertising, and transgressive signs are applied in an unauthorized way. Graffiti, stickers, they transcribe all the other discourses. And in the Science of the Metropolis project, we've added the commemorative discourse, signs that commemorate dates or events in urban space. And now I'm interested in seeing at possibly how the expectations of recipients of text in urban space are structured by prototypical combinations. And secondly, I want to dive deeper into the commercial discourse type and investigate how graphic parameters represent different product and service sectors, and how contexts of meaning are created, and how communicative actors are indicated in their shop signs. So my questions are, how do the discourse types differ? And do they differ between the northern and southern neighborhoods? And the hypothesis would be that if the discourse types differ significantly, we could assume that a combination of certain parameters gives off an indication of the type of information a passerby is encountering, possibly even from far away, possibly even before reading, being able to read the text. And moreover, if there are significant differences between the northern and southern parts of the city, that would indicate that the graphetic characteristics tell us something about the inhabitants and the social structure of the community. So what do you think are the two biggest groups we find in our data? 49% of our data are commercial, 39% are transgressive. The first group, the many commercial signs, we expected. What we didn't expect at all were 39% of transgressive signs, so bottom-up signs that you are fined for if the police sees you putting them up. That's a big group. When we looked at language distribution, the commercial discourse type is the most multilingual, showing 42 of 53 languages in our data set. But we also know that primary school children in Essen do speak more than 100 first languages. That means there's a lot out there lived that's actually not visible on the walls in writing. Infrastructural and regulatory signs are overwhelmingly German. Looking at non-Latin script system distribution, I have to admit, that's where I was quite disappointed. This is the biggest migration area in Germany, and we only have 14 non-Latin scripts that make up only 1.2% of our overall data, of our 25,500 images. The biggest occurrence is again 0.8% in commercial signs. This is really where multiscriptuality takes place on food markets and restaurants for translators, so in the trade sector. And Arabic is the most common script system after Latin, almost 0.5%. I'm going to go through the 5 discourse types individually now. On the left hand, you see sample images from that group. On the right, on top, we see the type styles. They are sans serif, actual handwriting, serif typefaces, scriptural letters, decorative typefaces, slab serif and black letter. In the middle, we have the colors, and at the bottom, we have materials, plastic, foil, metal, paper, paint. They always show the percentage to the overall data set, but bear in mind that, of course, signs sometimes have more than one color and more than one type style, so they don't add up to 100%. Okay, regulatory signs. 89% of them use a sans serif typeface, so the German governmental top-down communication is not only monolingual German and monoscriptural Latin, it's also mono sans serif. In Germany, in other countries I've visited, standardization of regulatory signs is quite different and sometimes generally lower. Regulatory signs strictly use black and white and primary colors, something I wasn't aware of before doing this analysis, and are for 80% a metal plate parade. Looking at infrastructural signs, 99% are still a sans serif typeface, but sometimes there's now a second typeface appearing. On regulatory, there's just one type style per sign. There's black and white. Black and white and primary colors are joined by secondary colors. And there's more diversity in materials now. Metal is joined by plastic and paper signs. When we go to commercial signs, this is really where the magic happens. This is very diverse in type styles. There's an average of 1.5 typefaces per item. A lot of serif, script, decorative, even black letter plays a role. Commercial signs are under competitive pressure, so they need to advertise and seduce, and this variety of expressive typographic forms supports this. Commercial signs show the largest color spectrum with an average of 3.3 colors per item, and the diversity in color is somehow parallel to the diversity in languages and scripts and type styles we see in commercial signs. And in the materials, we now have almost no metal at all. We have a lot of adhesive, foils, paper, and plastic. Looking at the transgressive signs, 60% of them are actual handwriting in tags and graffiti, but the rest are stickers, and they show the greatest variety in type styles, particularly decorative typefaces. Transgressive stickers often express political positions, social agendas, scene affiliations, and that requires connotatively strongly charged and expressive letter forms. And also clearly creativity and individuality takes precedence over legibility. Besides a lot of black in tagging, there's a wide range of colors, and materials is, of course, it's either paint or stickers. Lastly, in commemorative signs, they show a lot of serif typefaces and the highest percentage of 5% black letter. And what really surprised me, very little color overall. The last bar on the right you see is MC material color. So 50% of the signs just show the color of the materials themselves, stone, cast iron, which indicates that acts of commemoration in urban space are more a silent activity than a competitive or cheerful one. And we have materials here that do not exist in any other discourse, like 10% stone engraving, metal casting, blacksmith work. So we see very clearly here also how the materiality of signs and their value is linked with the function of the text. So in this case, the longevity of stone and iron and the intention of long-lasting memory come together. To conclude this bit, 3 out of 5 discourse types, regulatory, commercial, and transgressive, actually focus strongly on different materials to realize their messages. And for each discourse type, certain combinations of graphetic resources are more common than in others, which suggests that in typical combinations, graphetic resources do indicate the discourse types. We might also assume that sampling an appropriate range of graphic resources will help the sign producer to gain the sign perceiver's understanding and trust within a discourse. This also shows that the classification of skollen and bångskollen is neat. Let's have a look at my second question. How do the discourse types differ between northern and southern neighborhoods? That really surprised me. They actually do differ in certain graphic parameters quite a bit. The north is not only more diverse in languages and scripts, but also in colors and type styles. Let's have a detailed look at how that is. Northern districts have fewer monolingual occurrences. In the south, we have twice as many Western and Southern European languages, such as French, Italian, and Spanish. Whereas in the north, the younger migrant languages, such as Turkish and Arabic, are 5 times more common. And overall, the north shows more languages. 60% of the non-Latin script occurrences are in the north, but the writing systems are very unequally distributed. 90% of the Arabic texts are in the north, whereas 80% of scripts for writing Chinese, Japanese, and Korean are in the south, and they do only occur on Western signs, whereas Arabic signs occurs on many different sign types. Signs in the north show a higher percentage in 11 of 14 colors. The north is more colorful. 60% of, I went in the wrong direction. Sorry. Yes, the largest, looking at type styles, in the largest discourse type, the commercial signs, the north shows more decorative typefaces, more serif typefaces, more black letter, more slab serif fonts. The north has a greater variety in type styles. And also I've added this last graph, that's the diversity index that reflects the diversity of backgrounds of local residents. That is equally high in the north. Why is that the case? I've come up with 2 possible explanations. One is that owner-operated retail shops in the north are more diverse than international chains in the south. Looking at grocery stores, for example, here, the visual appearance of individual owned small shops is much more diverse in colors and type styles, also languages and scripts. Whereas big international chains very consciously tend to develop systematic, reduced, neutralized, one could say one look pleases all approaches. But that's only sort of half of the truth. If we make the same comparison with fashion shops, it's not small shops against big chains or layman design against marketing strategists, because owner-operated retail shops in the north are still more diverse than owner-operated shops in the south. So there might also be different aesthetic ideas playing a role. The other thing that struck me doing this data analysis was the very high number of decorative typefaces in Turkish texts in Duisburg-Marxloh. And I was like, what's happening there? Let's have a closer look. And I went back and looked through all decorative typefaces in the entire data set. And it turns out that in Turkish texts in Duisburg-Marxloh, there are unique occurrences. They do not exist in any other language or any other location. And people are creating something very lively and diverse and interesting. And I'm very intrigued by this finding because I believe there's a story behind it that's worth telling and exploring, in particular to my overall research question. And the first thing I did is I called colleagues in Istanbul and asked them if these typefaces look familiar to their eyes, because they look unfamiliar to mine. And they said, oh yeah, absolutely, seen stuff like that, I've seen this and that. So that was a first hint. Actually, we're looking at a variety of 20th century British and American advertising typefaces. Many of them revived for letraset in the 1970s. And some of them have swashes and ornamental elements that somehow, if you want, emulate something of a calligraphic tradition, remembering that Turkey had the script reform from Arabic to Latin in 1928, as you all know. So I looked further, and it seems to me that a lot of these typefaces are applied in signs of wedding shops. And there's actually quite a moving story behind this. When the coal mines and steelworks closed in Duisburg-Marxloh in the 1970s, the community of the, at the time, so-called guest workers from Turkey, they really had to save themselves. And they did by inventing a new industry, which is wedding dress tailoring. And within a few years, now at the moment, it's 51 shops in one intersection. It's a tiny area, 50 shops. Customers come from all over Europe. And I spoke with my friend Gülşah about the typefaces, and she said, it's funny, one of them really reminds me of a movie poster from my youth. And we found this exact match. The typeface is called Praetorian, early 20th century British typeface, revived for letraset in the 1970s. And I kept looking, and I found a second exact match. Typeface is called Roberta, 1960s American typeface, based on a Belgian restaurant sign. I found more typefaces that aren't exact matches, but still type style choices that share characteristics with features of typefaces used in famous 70s movie posters. And I have a hunch here that there's a particular community that sets very specific links with graphetic choices they make, and that have to do with a particular time and a particular product, and have an interesting play with connotations and traditions. If you want, it's a bit like a dream on 3 levels. There's this community that has to reinvent itself, and they do with the wedding dress shops. And there are the brides that have these dreams when they buy one of these very big, fantastic dresses, that when they enter these stores. And there's also the narratives that come from these movies. A lot of these movies, I've learned, have a sort of a similar structure where a rich man from the city sort of saves a poor girl from the countryside. There's so the topic of countryside to the city, transcending into other spaces, and so on, being saved from poverty sort of resonates in this. So in a way, these letter shapes combine these 3 levels of different dreams in these streets, in this particular location. Okay, I'm looking at time. I feel I have to rush a bit. My second focus was looking at how shops are differentiated by graphetic characteristics. And I looked at 400 individual shops that I put into 30 sort of types, bakeries, jewelry stores, that I then ordered in clusters. And I did a very detailed analysis. And just to quickly, I have to sum this a bit shorter. Some of them show very diverse visual strategies. And the short answer is that the graphetic characteristics don't define them. They're extremely diverse. Hairdressers use everything from Fettefraktur to Comic Sans. It's extremely colorful and playful and diverse. Whereas other shops have prevalent occurrences of typical visual characteristics that give hints on service and product sectors. For example, jewelers, 30 jewelry shops use for 60% serif typefaces and 50% the color gold. In 32 bakeries, 40% use a scriptural font, and 90% in the Ruhr area have a combination of red, yellow, and orange. In gambling halls, 40% show American show typefaces that sort of make a direct link to gamblers' paradises such as Las Vegas. So some prototypical combinations give a hint on service sectors, And in the gambling halls, it's a very sort of direct telling of what the business is about. Let me conclude. I hope with the comparison of the discourse types that I was able to show, although there are of course many overlaps, there are different accents and unique combinations in the use of graphetic resources, which would allow to conclude that what Spitzmüller, Brix, Baumann, and Hanks have suggested for genres, I find realized in systematically recurring combinations of graphic resources among other communicative means in urban space. So they can actually give sign recipients a frame of orientation and indicate communicative actors, evoke usual contexts of use and reception patterns. And in the comparison of the northern and southern neighborhoods in the multilingual typographic resources, they have shown to indicate social spaces and refer to processes of identity creation and make connections to other previous, following, or current times, places, contexts of meaning. My next steps will be doing interviews with the sign producers, the wedding dress shop owners in Duisburg to see where I am with my hunch and to collect these stories and motivations, and look at the other 4 significant typographic situations I found doing the big discourse analysis. Thank you very much. If you have any thoughts on this, I would love to hear feedback or drop me a line. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irmi, for this very rich and very solidly documented talk. Waiting others to react, I have, in fact, 2 suggestions and a question.
Yes.
So my first suggestion is, I saw in your database that you have 234 pictures of unklar language. And I'm sure that if you bring it to this conference, many of them will be resolved by the audience. And
thank you.
I think it would be quite challenging. So seriously, if you wish to put this on the conference website, then it would be a challenge for people to recognize these unklar languages. My second suggestion is on slide 4 to 10, you talk about Turkish.
Yeah.
And another thing you may investigate, and maybe you're doing it already, is the influence of the Turkish dotted capital E on other languages, because I've noticed that Turkish people will have the tendency of putting a dotted E even in German and in French. So maybe this is something you can identify in the pictures. And my question is on slide 423, you, so now you can show it.
I can show it again. I'm sorry, I
You're talking
this.
about transgressive signs.
Yes. Do you see it again?
Yes, 423. And you give an example of Arabic, and you say it's transgressive.
Yes.
The 4th, transgressive. And what I read is just Tunis. So
Tunis.
I guess it's a Tunisian who loves his country. So why is it transgressive?
Because it's applied on a wall of a sort of communal building. It's not an authorized sign. Someone has decided he wants to put the Tunis there, but it's not an advertising. It's not a governmental information.
Okay, so it's
a tag
because it's a graffiti on a public building.
Yeah, it's a tag. It's a graffiti, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions from the audience? Dan? No, okay. Thank you very much for this very nice talk.
Thank you.